President Akufo-Addo, in his 10th address to the nation on measures taken to curb the spread of the novel coronavirus, announced plans to reopen schools in phases for final year students. This sparked debate about the viability of his directives. Now, for this reason, I have with me here a renowned educationist, and we're going to discuss in detail the viability of the President's directive, some challenges, and also some repercussions we are supposed to expect in the coming days. Welcome, Mr. Hafa Anes, to Ghana Web TV. Thank you for having us.
My pleasure.
Okay, so we'll move straight to the point. How viable is the President's decision to reopen schools in phases for final year students?
Oh, first of all, the President needs to be commended for having brought us this far.
Yeah.
The situation isn't perfect, but we've really averted a possible catastrophe. So he really needs to be commended for it. Not only him, the immigration people, the immigration department,
Yeah.
the health people, and so on. The best thing we can do is to begin to close the schools for now and have a lid or an understanding of the spread, if any, and how it can be contained. The same way that the President alerted churches and mosques that we have to begin to operate, but we have to put distances between us. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
Now back to schools again. The most important group now are the junior high school students who are preparing for the BECE and the senior high school students who are preparing for the WASC.
Yeah.
We have to make allowances for them. In the meantime, all the other forms have to be, all the other classes have to be disbanded in some way. Now, what we're going to do, or what I think the plan is now, is to space them out in some way, or even stagger them so that they are not all in the same place at the same time. This is really going to be an experiment. What we need to be patient about is that this COVID-19 took everybody by surprise. Like I said earlier, it's an international phenomenon, and every country is grappling with it. So, once we begin to experiment or to find how successful or unsuccessful that we are by making sure that it's just JHS3 students who are there or senior high school students who are there, the final year students, then we begin to put into perspective the kind of hygienic conditions that we need. And by that, what I mean is this. We need to have sanitizers. You see, our best bet is prevention because we don't have the medical facilities, for oxygen, how do you call it?
Ventilators.
Ventilators, and that we don't have that. We need a nationwide effort. We are evolving. We need a nationwide effort because Ghana is at an inflection point where we can't just depend on a few government administrators, but it has to be a national issue where the parents too need to be very aware because the kids spend more time at home than they do in schools and so on.
How prepared school authorities are to receive the children in terms of facilities? You mentioned facilities earlier. In terms of all those amenities and classroom decks and are they really prepared? PPEs, all of those things.
Well, we can never have PPEs, for example. It's impossible. But now, are we prepared again? Again, I don't think we are sufficiently prepared for it. And frankly, looking at our resources and looking at the larger numbers of young people in schools, I don't think we can ever be sufficiently prepared. But it's better to be in a state of readiness than not be prepared at all. So you know what they're talking about, these Veronica buckets, for example, they have to be available and accessible. You're talking about masks. Those are not too expensive to have. We need to have those. We need to find ways in which you can make water available and so on. These are the preparations that we can do. The other preparation that we can also do is that we have to now begin to stagger classes so that if typically there were 60 kids in a classroom, we can't have that anymore. Those days are gone. Now, there's been many times, for example, when I was teaching the US, for example, I would take my classes under the trees because there's better ventilation there. There's shade there. There's a certain kind of freedom. And I was recently a guest speaker at African Leadership University in Mauritius. So some of the classes I held at the beaches. You won't believe this, you know, uh, so that there's while we are playing, we are learning from it. So there are also kinds of teaching strategies that has been incorporated where people are not necessarily always being in classrooms. So COVID has now exposed us, unfortunately, to begin to now accept who we are, what we've been doing in the past, that are not kosher, and how we can do things going forward. So there's an opportunity, you know. Crises offer opportunities that we cannot continue doing the same thing the same way in the past and expect a different result. How do we now begin to package ourselves?
So, from what you just said, have we gotten to the point where we accept that successive governments have failed in providing some of these things, have failed in harnessing the potential of technology?
We can always build on what others started.
Okay.
You know, you cannot say, for example, that a particular party came and they did absolutely nothing. You know, they do something, another group comes, and we have to build on what the others have done. We are in this together. When we have kids in the classroom, they could care less what parties are. It means nothing to them. They want to look at their conveniences, the toilets, the water availability, the internet facilities that like you're saying. But then things are happening. In fact, there are more things happening now than ever, because there's a progression, and we have to continue that. The most important thing that we need to see now is where we see everybody on board. You know, parties tend to be antagonistic with each other because they want party A wants party B to fail so they can come on, and then when they come on, the cycle continues. We have to begin to see how we're going to channel our energies in one way and not waste our time insulting others and so on, because it's so premature.
Availability of PPEs. We have some nurses and doctors in some health institutions crying for PPEs always, and you even said that we can never have efficient or sufficient PPEs. Do you think this is the right time to send children back to school, and government is capable of providing PPEs to every school?
It's quite elaborate. You know, I don't think that we can wait for every teacher in the country to have that. The same way Americans want teachers to have guns because there are people who are shooting and so on. We can't have that. Our best bet is to be hygienic. Our best bet is to space out youngsters. Our best bet is to have ventilation. But I don't think we can have enough PPEs, and if they're available, they need to be in hospitals and health facilities. But the point is this: there has to be that connection between school and the health facilities, because there's always the possibility that someone is infected in some way. How do we identify that? You know, and how do we make the health facility accessible to this particular individual? So the one thing that others are doing is that they are really disinfecting classrooms. You know, we can afford to not clean our tables, our desks, and so on, because these are all places where germs or viruses can hide.
And the Ministry of Education said parents wouldn't be allowed to see their children if they return to school. And is that a good call?
Well, I don't think anyone would ever say that parents, maybe there's a misunderstanding, parents cannot see their children, it's impossible. But what they mean is this: things have to be organized. That we can't just run in and run out. You know, we need to follow some protocol. Where, and again, this is also like when I was teaching outside the country. Sometimes I invite parents to come to the classroom, but then it has to be organized. It has to be planned for. You know, we have to find ways of doing that so that they also become, so that parents become part of the teaching and learning process. It has to be done. But you don't want a flood of parents in the schools, and of course, because we don't know how they themselves, how they themselves are protected. So that's also part of it. But I don't think anybody will ever say we don't want parents. It's impossible. You know, we are in this together. The schools, the teachers, the students, the parents, the PTAs, we are in this together. So the most important thing is that how do we learn to work together? You know, and again, what I say is this: parents now have to be very alert in terms of conditions in which they dump their kids, so to speak.
Per your expert opinion, do you think it's enough time, or do you think it would affect their performance going forward?
What it means now is that young people now have to also take it upon themselves to understand that we are in a crisis situation. So don't waste your time. You don't need a teacher to tell you that. You don't need your mother or your father to tell you that, because they are at the rate where they are sufficiently grown to begin to understand what's good for them. So a lot of the things that teachers should tell them, they've had enough of it. They have to now learn to concentrate and do the best that they can. But these are not normal times where we can expect glittering colors for everybody. But let's start with what we have and take it from there.
What, in your opinion, has been the biggest flaw in Ghana's educational system?
I would say teacher preparation. How do we prepare teachers to be to do a better job than what you do now? And then also, for example, the work that I do, where I train teachers, that's really my vocation, where we can now begin to even use digital means to prepare our lesson notes. It's very, very important to prepare what we call schemes of learning, to make them accessible to students. And by that, that's what I mean. You can go to any school and you pick any kid at random and say that this week, what are you going to study in chemistry or in mathematics, for example? They have to be able to tell you. If they are not able to tell you, or the chance that they'll tell you, my teacher hasn't told me, or maybe the teacher has told them, but they've forgotten. So now, what we need to do with the schemes of learning, for example, is that we need a course outline for the whole term, itemizing exactly what is going to be expected from on a week-to-week basis, according to the syllabus, and they have to be posted on bulletin boards in every classroom, so that students have access to them. And that's also where you begin to become lifelong learners, because some people are very sharp learners. You know, if they know what they're going to do in the course of the week, they can go ahead and prepare themselves sufficiently for it. These are the challenges that I think we need the School of Education to be aware of.
So the conversation doesn't end here. You can join in via all our social media platforms on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Ghana Web, and on YouTube at Ghana Web TV. Until then, keep safe and adhere to social distancing protocols. My name is Portia Etonam Konu.